Hi there, and welcome to Detectify's Q3 product release webinar. My name is Victor, and I'm a product marketer at Detectify, based in our Stockholm office. We have a lot to get through today, from improvements that we've made to our vulnerabilities view, to information that you can get from the attack surface, as well as giving you a bit of information about what's ahead in the coming weeks from our product roadmap, as well as what you can look forward to the end of the year. Now, before we get into the agenda, I want to take a minute to go over what Detectify does, particularly for those of you who are listening today who might be a new user to Detectify, or even considering Detectify as your external attack surface management solution. Now, Detectify has been covering the attack surface for thousands of customers around the world since 2018. And in 2018, we've learned a lot from customers in our conversations. One of the things that we've learned from customers is that they have a lot of channels for vulnerabilities, whether it's their public bug bounty, where thousands of hackers around the world are submitting bugs on their attack surface, to their quarterly or even annual pen testing program, where they are getting rich insights about the posture of their security, or even their pen testing or internal red teams who are testing the resilience of their systems every day. So security teams and organizations today have a huge backlog of vulnerabilities that they have to address. And oftentimes they're struggling to prioritize which of these vulnerabilities pose the most risk to their organization, and subsequently, what should they fix first. We also know that security teams have development teams who have more autonomy to choose the technologies that best solve the problem that they're working on. And this is great for developers, as developers now have a variety of different tools that they can use to create products faster for customers. The challenge for this for security teams is that security teams no longer know what technologies developers are using, and subsequently, what are the risks of those technologies that they pose to the organization. And lastly, and certainly not least, we know that security teams are working with shorter and shorter development life cycles, which means that they have to work with developers who are under tremendous pressure to get new products out to customers. And that means security teams have to provide software engineers with actionable remediation information about the vulnerabilities in their production. And that's no easy task, particularly when security teams have development teams maybe in 1 or 2 or even 3 different geographies. And one of the themes that we're going to talk about today is information overload. And to tell you a little bit about information overload, I would like to introduce you to a product manager at Detectify named Vendela. Okay. Hey, Vendela. Hey. Nice. I'm so happy to have you here. I think this is your first product release webinar.
It is. I'm really excited.
Well, we're super happy to have you. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the questions I have for you is, can you tell me a little bit about what your team at Detectify is working on?
Yeah, so my team is called Priority and Remediation. So we handle everything in the product, in the UI and the API that has to do with the customer's priority, like sort of all the findings they can see, and then how they prioritize them, and then how that moves into the remediation flow. So quite a lot of our user process is actually outside of Detectify, since everyone has their own tools to handle various things, right?
And what do you think? And what do you think are some of the challenges that you've heard from your conversations with customers?
So you talked a little bit about it, right, in the intro. It's security teams can have up to like dozens of different tools and different routes of getting findings. So you're looking at maybe a dashboard that feeds you information from all of these different sources. So you can have up to like 100,000 open findings. That's quite a lot. So that's a major challenge for a lot of them, actually. How do you kind of wade through this mass of things coming in, decide what the most important things are to fix, and funnel those over to development teams in like a smooth way, right?
Right. And what do you think are some of the risks of the security teams where they have, hundreds of open vulnerabilities? Like, what are some of the risks of them not being able to prioritize them? What sort of consequences does a business see when that happens?
I mean, it's 2 different things, right? Like, one is that you can actually miss something quite important. Right. I mean, quite often they have very specific channels set up for super critical things. So they do get those. But if you miss something like, actually, in this particular context, this medium vulnerability is super important because it happens to our core business, but it got lost in the flow of like, you got another 50,000 coming in from something else. So, and the other one is that you risk kind of overwhelming your development teams. Because if you're sending over everything you get, to them, they might end up with a lot of things that they don't have time to fix because they're also shipping features.
Right. And let's talk about the developers. We talk a lot about how the security team is feeling overwhelmed with the various channels of vulnerabilities that they're getting. But in addition to the development teams actually feeling pressure, what are some of the other challenges that developer teams on the other end of those vulnerabilities are experiencing?
I mean, they aren't necessarily security experts, right? So you have to give them useful security information, and that isn't too sort of overwhelming in that way. Like, you want to get very specific, very clear instructions. Like, you've got this vulnerability, this is how to fix it. So that's one of our challenges as well, is to provide really good information.
Nice. Yeah. Well, my last question for you is, I know we've talked a little bit about information overload, but can you tell me how Detectify is addressing the problem of information overload in our tool?
Yes. So we're working on several different things, right? We're trying to help make it easier for security teams to kind of get stuff out of the UI. So they, I don't care about this. I'm not going to address it. Where do you put that?
Right.
But also we're kind of working on different ways of helping them prioritize and sort the attack surface into groups. So I have a couple of sort of things to demo, which I guess we could move over to.
Yeah, let's demo it.
All right. So here is, you are in your vulnerabilities page right now. You've got your open vulnerabilities. One of the things that we are testing out right now is a new menu. So we had this feature already. You can mark things as false positive or accepted risk or fixed if you fixed something. But we decided we wanted to make that a little more visible. So if you sort of click out your menu and you see these kind of buckets of fixed and accepted risk, etc., over here, that makes it a lot easier for security teams to just kind of go through and be like, actually, this cookie security flag, I don't care. It's an accepted risk. Okay, so we're going to mark that as accepted risk. Yes. And then those move out of your open vulnerabilities and into accepted risk. And you can always go back and review them. So you've got them over here. But that just makes it a lot easier to kind of bulk move stuff over. And then we also have, you can save a filter. Say you have an asset that you always care about, that you always want to see. So you want to quickly be able to see like what critical and high vulnerabilities on, in this case, Fairy Ninja. So then you just go over here and you name your filter Fairy Ninja critical and high, and you save that. And that way you've got that in your vulnerabilities page. So you can just kind of go straight to that. You can go to your vulnerabilities page, select your saved filter and go, okay, this is the one I want to see. And then we're also sort of releasing, we're going to go over to this tab, because we're also releasing a new thing called subteams.
Great.
And this is kind of a way to help our users focus on what matters. So it lets you define ownership of assets and help the members of your organization look at the right things, right? So we're working on different things and we're kind of trying to find the best ways of like helping users do this. Because we also, I mean, security is a concern for everyone, right? So you need different solutions because not everyone has the same setup.
Right.
So for some people, subteams are going to work really well, especially if you have a large attack surface, right? So you go here under the organization tab, you hit create subteam. The first thing you want to do is name it. So demo webinar. Let's do that today, right?
Sounds great.
And this is, okay, my subteam for the webinar. There we go. Next. And here is where you can add a filter to your subteam. So you can either go exact match, so like example.com, or you can do exact match and subdomains. And then you want to do, so you can do Detectify, I just have to spell this correctly, .com, and you add a filter, and then you see that you've got a little star too, so you have two filters, so you actually get the subdomains of this asset as well. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Done. So then it appears. And then you can go over to Surface Management and see this subteam in action. So you go from kind of having a lot of assets to actually this is my critical one.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So, and then you can go into it and see the attack surface for this specific subteam. That's
fantastic. And this feature will be available to users in the coming weeks, I hear.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Vendela, thank you so much for demoing not only how you can get more value out of the vulnerabilities view, but also subteams. Thank you all for hanging with us while we bring in our next speaker. To recap what Vendela talked about, we went over more on information overload and what we're doing in our tool to give users more information that they can take action on, both within the security team, but also for developers. We also went over subteams, which is a new feature we'll be launching very soon. So now I'm joined by my colleague Alexander, who's going to give us a bit of information about what we've shipped in this quarter for the attack surface view. So welcome, Alex. I think the last time you were here was back in Q1.
Yeah,
thanks for joining us again.
Thank you.
My first question for you is: can you tell those who are listening a little bit more about what you're working on at Detectify and what your team does?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I work as a product manager and very closely with two teams: the Surface Discovery team, where we work on basically mapping out your whole attack surface to the sort of the most wide degree as possible and go deep as well. And then I work with the surface management team that then take the attack surface information we have and make it accessible and really accessible, queryable, summarize it and make it actionable in the end. So that's really what we do there. We're also responsible for the overall product experience of the surface monitoring product.
And you must speak to a lot of our customers every day. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the challenges you're hearing from the customers you speak to about the attack surface?
Yeah, and I think what the core problem they have, especially when they come in as new customers or get in contact with us for the first time, is really this sort of not knowing what they have, not knowing what do they have across, what is actually part of their scope and what they're owning. And so that's really where it all starts out, where we can help out and find that, bring the unknowns into the known and shine light on it. And that's something we've been working on in this past quarter, actually, where we've improved the domain discovery we have, which is sort of the fundamental bit where we discover the domains that you have. And that we've improved with. So now we're finding on a given week about 3 times as many
that's great.
domains as we did before this quarter. So we're really excited about that, and that brings a lot more into the sort of the sphere of the known.
Right, and there are a lot of companies out there that are working on the attack surface. But why has Detectify decided to focus the attack surface at the DNS level? Like, why do we talk about the DNS so much in the attack surface?
Yeah, I mean, the DNS is a super sort of key part of the internet infrastructure. And what a lot of people don't know, I mean, people usually focus on the security of the web applications.
Right.
But what a lot of people don't know is that I mean, the way you set up the DNS records is super important for your security. It can be related to email spoofing or like leaving domains open for takeovers. And so it's super important to have a good sort of DNS health. And we have lots of assessment as part of the surface monitoring product that focuses on the DNS records. And
what are some of those kind of variables we can say that we are looking at when we are scanning a subdomain or an asset?
Yeah, I mean, we look at quite a bit of different variables here. So we start with the domain, which is sort of the starting point.
Right.
And then we find, okay, what DNS records do we have for that? We then find the IPs that those point to. We find the ports that are open with our port scanning. So looking for across thousands of different ports several times a day. And what are the web technologies that are used in those or on the apps that we find there.
And why should security teams care about, the DNS record types that they're finding or the open ports? Like, what are some of the use cases that security teams can take away from the service management view or the additional assets on additional information about assets?
Yeah. So it's really getting that visibility of what you have in your attack surface. And so knowing the DNS records, for example, is super important to understand, okay, what type of asset is this? If you find a vulnerability, you want to know what it is. So we've actually worked on that in the past quarter on adding sort of more visibility in the way you work with the attack surface. So when you go to the surface management pages where we have the attack surface, you can much easily sort of navigate and zoom in and zoom out between zooming out and seeing the sort of on the apex or root domain level, and then zoom in and see all the different subdomains that are connected to that root, and there directly see like what are the different DNS records you have there. So you just quickly get that insight. What are the different assets I have there? Like how many ports are open and which are those ports? Because that's really important for your security posture. Like the right ports should be open for the right purpose and nothing else.
Well, I can ask questions all day about the attack surface. How about we show our audience what we've been up to this last quarter in the product?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the Surface Management tab that we have here, we have two different sub-tabs that you can go to. We have the attack surface and we have the root assets. And what we've done in this past quarter is actually remove a bit of legacy functionality that sort of distracted from the real purpose here of sort of knowing what you have. And so we've connected the root asset with the attack surface in a new way where if you go here, which is sort of the zoomed out view where you can really see like a summary of these are the root assets I have, which is what we've seen when we talk to customers, like a common way of thinking that, oh, okay, now I want to look at this particular root. And then, so if we do that here, for example, we can just take, for example, Detectify demo here and click on that and get straight into the attack surface and see those subdomains that relate to the detectifydemo.com. And right away here we see that sort of those DNS records that we added, and we made it visible now in the attack surface so that you can sort of use this space to decide what are the filters you want to apply, what's the data you want to look at, and just quickly scroll through and get that overview immediately without having to click back and forth a lot. So I'd say that's an indication of where we're going to be taking the attack surface in the future as well, like really bringing the information there and bringing the information that you care about into that attack surface and making it customizable.
And something that we talked about in Vendo's conversation is this idea of information overload, and that we've also heard from security teams that everything that is a vulnerability might not actually pose a risk to their organization. Okay. How is Detectify going about solving the problem of information overload in terms of it might not be a vulnerability, but I might still want to know of anomalies or risks that pop up on my attack surface?
Yeah, and I mean that's a great question and a problem we hear a lot when we talk to our customers. And it's really sort of, okay, now we have this information, we have everything, we can understand what we have. But how do I know that it's when something is changing? Like, is it up to the sort of the standards that we have internally? Like you talked about the risks and the anomalies, and those are a lot of the time very unique to organizations and change from organization to organization, which is something that doesn't have a vulnerability. So vulnerability is a vulnerability. So the way we want to, this is actually something we're working on addressing right now, and which I want to show you, and something we call custom policies, which is you can set up specific the conditions that should apply to your attack surface, and if something is breaching that, we will alert you about that. So that can be, for example, when we talk to our customers about this. We hear, for example, that, okay, we have a set of ports that should never be open, for example, or we have specific rules on the way that the SPF, DMARC, and DKIM records should be set up. And then we want to make sure that, okay, this might apply today, but will it apply tomorrow? Right. And that's really where custom policies will come in.
And do you have an example of, what port, an open port that probably shouldn't be open that you think security teams should care about?
Yeah, so it's, for example, ports related to remote desktop protocol, which is really a common way to I mean, if it might be there for a real business case,
Sure.
but usually it's not, and then you should really close that down. And I mean, in general, what most of our customers that we speak to actually have as what that they tell us that's the way they operate, is that only port 80 and 443 should be open, and those are the ones you commonly use for HTTP and HTTPS.
Great.
So that's really like, but we want to bring that possibility for you to decide that on your own.
Great. Well, I'd love for you to show us.
Yeah, let's get into it. So what we're working on right now, this is in production, but it is behind a feature toggle currently. So we're working with select customers to get going with this. And we have something called custom policies that you can go into from the main menu. And this is now the empty state showing you what this is. We're trying to describe what it is. And what you can do here is you can create those policies and then specify the conditions that, if met, will trigger an alert so that you will know about that something is not up to how, or in the way it should be.
Right.
So you start by setting your conditions, and we start out, I mean, the way we do all our product development is really starting small and then evolving.
Great.
And now we're starting with a first iteration on this with where we're creating rules for ports. So if you have specific port numbers, let's take that rule I talked about, the common one, that if any port that is not 80 or 443 is open, I want to know about it. So we take, if port number is not one of 80 or 443, then I want an alert to be created. And then we put a name on this. So alert if, that was caps, alert if 80 or if port is not 80 or 443. And then we create that, and we refresh, and we now have that policy running, and that will be continuously monitoring your attack surface for any changes to the ports that are open.
Great.
And if we now find a port that is not 80 or 443, we will create an alert for you and let you know about it.
Awesome. And I heard that we're have some customers who are actually trying it, or we're going to be soon trying it with a couple of customers.
Yeah, very soon. So we're still working on this feature, and but very soon we will be kicking this off with a pretty diverse group of customers. And I mean, we're always looking for more customers that are interested in this and that want to try it out. So we will be expanding that, but we will also not be holding back, and we want to get this into the hands of all our surface monitoring customers as soon as possible.
Excellent. Well, Alexander, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a good time. But with that said, we're going to turn it over to Johanna Udegaard, who is our VP of product, who, like Alex, is going to give us a bit of information about not only custom policies, but other sort of features that we have coming out to customers in the coming weeks, as well as looking towards the end of the year.
Thank you, Victor. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to take you through 4 of our major product updates that are coming this fall. So as you saw, Alexander was demoing the attack surface custom policies. I'm really excited about this one, mainly because of 2 perspectives, I would say. One of them is what Wendla shared about cognitive overload for security teams. We can't really expect the teams to act on just enormous amounts of data. And the perspective of priority here is not as clear as for vulnerabilities. You can't just look at a severity and see what is most important to act on. So there needs to be an aspect helping teams to actually know what on the attack surface to take actions on. So that's one aspect. The other is the context. So it often matters what things are actually anomalies or things to act on. Depends on the context of a company. So we want to give companies the opportunity to give us that context and then build rules based on that, so that you can build those policies in accordance to what matters to you. So this feature will be available sometime in October, and we're really excited to be testing that with all of you. Secondly, as Vendela showed, the sub-teams or grouping is an initiative that we're looking at. We are allowing customers to group assets into different buckets to have an easier time working with big attack surfaces and big amounts of data. And this is also something that we think will help with the cognitive overload perspective. The third thing that we're working on is the discovery of technologies on the attack surface. So we're looking to enrich our attack surface discovery data with technology information. We already today run 3,000 or more different tests to discover technologies on the attack surface. It could be CMS, server, JavaScript, and so on. We will be presenting this information in the tool in the coming weeks as well. And the fourth and last thing is improvements that we're doing to the overview, reports, and export functionalities. So again, we know that dumping a lot of information might not be that useful. So we are working on giving a better overview in the tool, both of vulnerability information and of attack surface information. But also improving the ability to actually export the data, both in the purpose of reporting to stakeholders, but also in the purpose of actually remediating vulnerabilities and other policies. Yes, so those are the four most important things I would say that are ahead. We're doing other things as well, and we will be publishing information about other product updates in our blog and in other customer communication. From the product side, we're always also interested in getting input from customers and also being very involved in talking to you. So in the follow-up communication, we will go out with some information on how you can actually get involved in both impacting our product roadmap, but also helping us being testers of new functionality and so on. So that was all from me. Thank you so much, and over to you, Victor.
Thank you so much, Johanna, for giving us an update on what customers can expect in the coming weeks. So if all of you are watching, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you have 1,000,001 things on your plate right now, so we really appreciate the time. Today, we went over a lot. You got an update on information overload from Vendela and what we're doing in the vulnerabilities view, so you can take that information to your developers. We also learned more about what we're doing around subteams, so that you can take certain assets on your attack surface and group them so that you can take action on the assets that matter the most to your organization and your business context. We also learned from Alexander about what we've been up to with the attack surface view and the information that we're providing you on your attack surface. You can take action on the items that matter the most to you. We also learned a bit about custom policies, which is a new feature we'll be launching in the coming weeks for customers using surface monitoring. And obviously, Johannes gave us a great overview of what you can expect later this year. So with that said, if you have any questions, you'll hear from us very soon in email. And thank you for joining us today.